microphones, you have to push. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Beaumont City Council Special Meeting Workshop for December 7th. We will open today's meeting at 5:01 PM. And can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Martinez?
Here.
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember Voigt?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lara?
Here.
Mayor Finn?
Here. Do we have any public comment this evening?
I have no written requests for this portion of the meeting. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, thank you. And we will move right on into our action items. Item C1, Riverside County Transportation Commission Traffic Relief Plan. And we will hand that over to staff for an introduction by City Manager Elizabeth Gibbs.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we have with us Executive Director Ann Mayer and Deputy Executive Director Aaron Hake, and they are going to present to council and the public the draft 2024 Traffic Relief Plan.
You're on, go right ahead. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, appreciate you being here.
Great. Thank you again for having us here this evening. I'm Ann Mayer, the Executive Director of RCTC. We really appreciate the opportunity to join you, especially in a workshop setting, so we can not only share what is going on at RCTC, but also so that we can talk about your concerns related to transportation and traffic. Again, joining me today is Aaron Hake, our Deputy Executive Director, but also in the audience, we have David Knudsen, our External Affairs Director, and Natalia Garcia, our Community Engagement Manager. So the RCTC team is here in force tonight. Again, our goal is to be able to review our traffic relief plan with you and to seek your comments. I'd like to thank the entire City Council, but also RCTC First Vice Chair Lloyd White for his commitment at RCTC, his involvement at RCTC. He certainly represents the city of Beaumont very well at RCTC, and we're very appreciative of that. So just in getting started, if we could get the PowerPoint presentation up now? Great, okay. Can we go to the next slide, please, Aaron? Thank you. So as we get started, I just want to make sure that I provide a background for you regarding RCTC. While many of the council members and city staff may be aware of RCTC, it's important that the public has an understanding of the role of RCTC and our interests. So RCTC was established in 1976. We are the Regional Transportation Planning Agency. We are governed by 34 commissioners. So there are voting representatives, elected officials from each of the 28 cities, all 5 county supervisors, and a governor's ex officio appointee, and that's the Caltrans District 8 director. So as you can see, the county in its entirety is represented on this regional body. We, in addition to being the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, we also administer Measure A. So Measure A is the existing half-cent sales tax measure for transportation in Riverside County. And one of the key components of Measure A is that on a monthly basis, we remit an amount to the city of Beaumont and each of the cities in the county unincorporated areas to pay for some of the local road maintenance, some of the work in your capital improvement program. But we also fund Beaumont Transit through state and federal funding sources. We are one of the member agencies of MetroLink. We also provide funding to RTA and Sunline, as well as 4 other transit agencies in Riverside County. The voters in Riverside County have twice approved a sales tax, first time in 1988 and again in 2002. So one of our more recent acquisitions in terms of responsibilities, we also are the operator of the Riverside Express lanes on State Route 91, so the 91 Express lanes and the Interstate 15 Express lanes. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about funding that RCTC provides for transit and MetroLink, as well as some of your local road maintenance, but I also wanted to point out that we're also engaged in some of the larger projects here in the Pass area. This slide is showing some of the significant investments up here in the past on projects. About $445 million has been spent up here in the past on some key projects, and about half of that has come from RCTC sources. So RCTC, although we may not be the lead on some key projects in the past or throughout the county, we are usually there as a funding partner, helping to make sure that these really important projects get completed. Got a list here of some key projects that we're engaged in. State Route 60, Potrero Interchange. We were thrilled with the additional funding that the city received on that, and RCTC has also allocated a significant amount of money there. I-10 Highland Springs Interchange. We are the lead on that interchange on behalf of Beaumont and Banning. And we've listed some other projects, the 60 Truck Lanes project, which, by the way, I don't know about you, but I love that 60 Truck Lanes project. It has made such a difference in terms of traffic safety. It is a much more reliable trip, and certainly allowing the trucks to have their own lane has really made a difference. So I hope that's been of benefit to your community. So you can see here that a lot of improvements have been made. Next slide, please, Erin. So in spite of all of those investments, as we know, and certainly up here in the past, over the past couple of years, you've certainly seen a significant increase in traffic. In the past, I've lived in Yucaipa for 34 years now, just on the other side of the county line, but close enough that I can probably throw a softball over to the county line and end up in Riverside County. So I've watched the traffic grow exponentially up here in the past. I've seen the impact that it's had on the communities, on the commute on I-10 for those going to work in other locations, and with the increase in housing. More and more people are moving in this direction for quality of life purposes. These are beautiful communities. All you have to do is look out a window on a beautiful, gorgeous day at the mountains, and you know why a lot of people want to live here. But that also means more people are here, more people are on the road, and we need to try and provide more transportation solutions. So in 2020, we adopted a traffic relief plan that was built on many years of public input regarding priorities, and our commission in the past year has encouraged us to look at updating our draft traffic relief plan, and that's what we're here for this evening on the start of our outreach related to trying to make sure that we know what's important to communities. We've got a draft traffic relief plan. Erin will be going through it in more detail. But our goal is that we identify key priorities for our communities and that we identify ways of getting those investments done, because we simply are at a point where our funding gap is really quite large. As you can see on this slide, our capital needs are in the tens of billions of dollars for all modes of transportation, whether it's your local sidewalks, pedestrian facilities, trails, roadways, freeways. All modes of transportation need investment, and the needs are pretty significant. So it's a really quick introduction to the topic. I'm going to turn it over to Erin to walk through the traffic relief plan in a little bit more detail, but we are here to answer your questions. Very interested in hearing about what's important to you as a council and what's important to your community members as well. Erin.
Thank you, Ann. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's an honor to be here before you. This document and the one that we adopted in 2020 is not just a government document. It is based on, and at the heart of it is the feedback from your constituents, the community here and throughout Riverside County. We did extensive public outreach through telephone town halls. We did a social media campaign called #RebootMyCommute, where we got the community engaged in telling us their story about what they face on a daily basis, whether that's to take their kids to school, get to medical appointments, go to work. And they told us what their needs are, and we identified from there where we need to make investments. We worked with your staff and the staff of the county and all of the other jurisdictions and the transit operators throughout the county to identify what are the projects that would address those needs. And that's what constitutes this draft traffic relief plan that we are now circulating for public input. And we're asking, did we get it right? Are there things that we're missing? Are there things that you really like? Are there things that you don't like? before we take a final action and then decide what we're going to do with it. So it does represent $25 billion of investment. As Ann mentioned on the previous slide, we have tens of billions of dollars in need, and that figure of a $23 billion capital need was developed back in 2016, before we had the inflationary pressures that we now face today, so that number is probably substantially higher. So even this $25 billion investment may yet not be enough, but it's a significant start, and a good step forward, we believe. The one thing to note, though, that this is a plan. It's not funded, and we'll get to how do we get to that funding at the end of the presentation. But what I want to get to now is what are the components of the plan? I don't expect you to read everything on that map, but that is Western Riverside County, and what we want to demonstrate here is that the plan is comprehensive and that it addresses needs throughout Western Riverside County, including here in the Pass area. And we also know that residents here, they travel elsewhere for work or to do their business. So even if you are a resident here, you may be interested in some of the improvements in Southwest Riverside County or in the Riverside and Corona area or in the Coachella Valley. We're going to focus here tonight on the Western Riverside County portion of the plan. And we're proposing to divvy up the investments according to the pie chart on your screen. We have these expenditure categories: safe streets and roads, highways, regional connections, public transportation, commuter assistance, active transportation, and environmental mitigation. And what I'll do now is kind of walk through each of those investment categories, what constitutes them, what types of improvements would be made within each of them. We'll start with safe streets and roads. And this is where we heard a lot of feedback from the public. People want investments in their neighborhood and in their local route when they're doing something out and about here in the community, whether it's repairing a pothole, putting a signal in, making that improvement that's just going to, unlock that log jam in their local street, making sure that they aren't hitting every red light, synchronizing the signals. So we created an investment category here in the traffic relief plan for safe streets and roads. We also have significant needs in this county. You may be familiar with routes such as Gilman Springs Road or the Ramona Expressway that are, sort of in this area, but I'm sure that constituents here use, where there are very high accident rates, and unfortunately, when we look at the press enterprise, we'll see that there's a fatality on an all too frequent basis. And these are roads that need significant investment. Cajalco Road is another one, more to the west, where there has been a long-standing need for us to do something to upgrade these two-lane roads that really serve more as regional arterials or even highways, but that have an unfortunate number of safety incidents that need a major investment. So what we're proposing here in the traffic relief plan is an expenditure category that spends half of the funds on these major regional safety projects, while putting the other half directly back into your communities and ensuring that every city and the County of Riverside, for the unincorporated communities, receives a fair share of those funds for you to spend at your discretion. Today, Measure A does have a percentage that goes to you, to the City Council, for your decision on how to invest in your capital improvement program, and these funds would be similar to that. And our CTC would send you the monthly revenue, and it's up to you what to do with it within these parameters. A significant category in the traffic relief plan for Western Riverside County is highways. This is probably where we get the most feedback. People want to get on the freeway and they want it to move. We all know where the bottlenecks are, and there are significant improvements that we can make throughout the region to address that. This slide focuses on improvements that we're proposing here in the San Gorgonio Pass, and most of them are related to interchanges. We know that the city has interchanges that were built decades ago that are antiquated. They don't operate well. People get stuck trying to get off the freeway. That's something we've consistently heard here from the residents and from the city. It's we have interchanges. We're getting backed up onto the main line. It causes freeway congestion, and it's also a safety concern. So this slide here mentions the interchanges that have been identified by the city and your neighboring cities, as well as our partners at Morongo, as the highest priority interchange needs, and we've included them in the traffic relief plan. We've also been exploring the idea of implementing express lanes on Interstate 10. As you probably know, RCTC recently constructed express lanes on the 91 in Riverside County, on I-15. And just this last week, or 2 weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving, we opened an express lane connector that fully connects the 15 and the 91 express lanes. So we have a network of express lanes in western Riverside County that are giving people a mobility option they didn't have before to bypass the congestion, get a reliable trip, and also gives the opportunity for public transit to not get stuck in the traffic that everybody else gets stuck in. So it provides some alternatives for people to move around. We think there's a possibility that the express lane concept could work in the pass area, and so we have just kicked off a feasibility study to add express lanes on I-10 between the 60 and the 111 in Palm Springs. That project's still many years away, but we think it's viable, and so we've included it in the traffic relief plan. The other thing we're looking at, it's the first bullet on this slide, is using technology. We're doing this in Temecula. There's a pilot program we're implementing there to coordinate the ramp meters that, when you get to the end of the ramp, sometimes you get a red light saying hold up, and usually that's because the freeway's backed up and we're trying to keep the freeway flowing. But today those ramp meters don't talk to each other, and it's not always a coordinated system. And by coordinating them, we're using some technology that Australia and Colorado have successfully implemented that has improved volume flow of traffic on the freeway significantly, simply by using technology to time those signals to control when people get on and off the freeway. So we think there are some low-hanging fruit there we may be able to implement on the 10 in this area that we'll be looking at as well. Regional connections. So anyone who's lived here any amount of time know that we need to get from this area to, say, Temecula, or we need to get to Moreno Valley, or we need to get to some other part of the county. And there are major corridors that need to be developed to make these types of trips better, safer, more reliable. We're a growing county. This region is growing. This part of the Riverside County is growing tremendously, as are others. And so we simply don't have the mature infrastructure system that other more developed metropolitan areas have that have already built out. They've already built these roads. And so we've created a funding category dedicated to improvements such as realigning the State Route 79 to the south of here through the Hemet and San Jacinto Valley, creating a bypass between Banning and Cabazon to the east of here. I'm sure you've heard many stories. We hear them as well about what happens when there's an accident on I-10 that may shut down the freeway and there's no alternative. There's no parallel route for people. That is also a safety concern. And so the County of Riverside is working on a project to create that alternative. We're supportive of that, and we believe it should be funded as a regional connection. Cajalco Road is another such regional connection, completing the Mid-County Parkway, which we are making progress on, but we probably still have another $1 billion to go or so to finish that connection between I-215 and the Hemet-San Jacinto area. We're marching eastward with as much money as we can. And then constructing a new Ethonac Expressway, that's down in the southwest part of the county, connecting Lake Elsinore to Paris. Public transportation is an integral part of our transportation system. People rely on it. It creates an alternative for people to get out of their cars. But for some people, it's a necessity. And so we've proposed that 25% of the investments in the traffic relief plan be put into our bus and rail system. And these investments range from the big ticket item, which is introducing daily passenger rail service through this area from Los Angeles to the Coachella Valley. We call this Coachella Valley Rail, or CV Rail. It's a $1.5 billion rail project. It's very ambitious. The Coachella Valley is one of the largest metropolitan regions in the country that does not have daily rail service. The commission has made a lot of progress on this project, and with this funding category, we will make investments in making that happen. There's also a push right now to convert all, in fact, I think the city of Beaumont has is going to have to do this soon too, is convert all of your buses, you have a transit system here, to zero emission. This is a mandate from the state of California, and there is a huge funding gap to make that happen. And so we want to be supportive of our transit operators, such as here at the city of Beaumont, to make sure that you have the resources to meet those zero emission mandates. We also have Metrolink throughout western Riverside County. Although Metrolink doesn't come here right now, we think there's opportunities to expand it. Excuse me, as well as just making improvements at our existing rail stations and investing in the RTA bus system. Microtransit is another technology that's recently created. This is on-demand transit service. It's proven very successful in a pilot in the Hemet and San Jacinto area, and I think there's a push by RTA to start looking at introducing that in more places. Commuter assistance. Have you seen the little white tow trucks that rove some of the freeways? They have a little, I should have had a symbol on here. They have the yellow triangle and a blue circle on the side. And this is by far the most popular thing our CTC does. And when people find out that their tax dollars paid for this, they tell us it's the best investment of tax dollars they've ever seen. So Freeway Service Patrol is that roving tow truck service during peak commute times or during construction, where they can get you off the road if you break down, get a flat tire, run out of gas. They keep traffic moving, but they also keep people safe. And this is a free of charge service we provide to the public. We're very proud of it. However, there's a need for more of it, and right now it doesn't exist here in this stretch of I-10, and we'd like to do that. Park and rides, giving people opportunities to carpool is another investment we believe is necessary. We also today work with employers who are looking for ways to offer benefits to their employees, giving them incentives to have their employees van pool, carpool, giving them options to take transit. We want to work with the employers here in western Riverside County so that we can help their employees get people off the road through congestion. Active transportation. This is the term of art for sidewalks, bike lanes, anything that assists someone who's moving their body to move around. This is also something we hear a lot from the public about when we did a recent round of focus groups throughout western Riverside County. We heard a lot from people who just want a sidewalk near their neighborhood, or they're trying to get to a transit station and there's really no safe way for them to get there. These are just basic things that some communities really need. And we want to make sure that no matter how you get around, you have a way to do it here. So this investment category is for all types of pedestrian infrastructure, safe routes to school for our kids, anything we can do to improve safety. The last big category here is environmental mitigation. And this is something that didn't exist in the 2020 traffic relief plan, but we see an increasing need to include today. Building any sort of infrastructure is going to have an environmental impact, and we need to make sure that we have the funds to pay for those impacts. The state of California has moved to a system where we need to mitigate any increase in the amount of driving that people do. So there's an assumption that's been made that as part of the CEQA process, that if you build a road, that means that someone's going to be driving more and you need to offset that. And that could mean more public transit, that could mean more sidewalks, that could mean that could mean funding for affordable housing, higher density housing. It could mean a whole host of things. But in order to deliver transportation projects, it's becoming increasingly clear we need to have the funding to mitigate the impacts that we're going to be required to mitigate by the state of California. So we think that this is a necessary component. We also have, we just went through Tropical Storm Hillary a couple of months ago. It hit this region pretty hard. We see the likelihood that events like that will continue. Our friends just to the east here in Desert Hot Springs and Palm Springs and in Coachella had major roadways wiped out cutting off communities completely. We see a great need to start shoring up this type of infrastructure from future natural hazards, and we want to make sure that the money is there to help them when they need it or to get ahead of it, so we're not in this situation again. It's vital for the safety of our communities. We're also proposing, this isn't on the slide, but I do want to point it out. This region participates in the Multiple Species Habitat Conservation Plan. Councilmember Martinez serves on that board of the RCA. That organization implements a habitat plan that allows development and transportation projects in this region to occur in a more with more consistent approvals from the environmental agencies. It's critical for us being able to have the economic development we desire. That program needs additional funding. So if we're to continue to have our transportation and development needs met, completing funding of the MSHCP is critical, and this funding category would contribute half of its funds as proposed towards the MSHCP until that program is complete, and then we can move forward. Now, gone through a lot of investments, and I do want to note for the public that's watching, or whether they're here or watching online, trafficreliefplan.org has the details of everything that I've just talked about, and we have some hard copies here today. We'd be happy to leave those with the members of the public who are interested. I want to move on and conclude with talking about what the public has told us. We did a public opinion survey earlier this year. RCTC conducted a statistically valid public opinion survey earlier this year to ask them about their views on transportation issues. And would you be willing to pay an additional sales tax to get those transportation investments? This slide represents what we heard from the residents of this sub-region of Western Riverside County. We saw that, first of all, across the county, 8 in 10 residents perceive that there is some or great need for additional funding for transportation. That's significant. That's a lot. Here are the needs that they told us that they see. 92% of them say keeping roads in good condition are their priority. 90% identified pothole repair. 84% said their priority is reducing congestion and traffic jams. 83% improving safety, and 78% reducing truck traffic congestion. Moreover, 66%, nearly 2/3 of Beaumont, Banning, and Calamasa residents that we polled, the zip codes are mentioned there on your screen, said that they would support a sales tax. It says revenue there, but we specifically asked them about a 1-cent sales tax to fund the projects that we outlined here in the traffic relief plan. We also conducted another type of study. We looked at what would be the economic impacts of this traffic relief plan coming to fruition. We retained Beacon Economics, who has done RCTC's economic forecasting for many years, to take a look at the traffic relief plan. They looked at some sample projects. They looked at the type of investments we were making, and it presumed that a 1% sales tax would be initiated here in Riverside County that would generate $25 billion. And they concluded at the end of their analysis that over the period of 30 years, that measure would support 168,000 jobs and create nearly $11 billion in labor income with a total economic output of nearly $31 billion for this region. So, if such a measure were to be implemented, where would the money go? So, over a 30-year period, we had to put some sort of time parameter on it to give you a number. Over a 30-year period, we estimate a $25 billion return in revenue. And in this part of the county, in Western Riverside County, we estimate that would generate about $20 billion. In the Coachella Valley, $5 billion. and out in Blythe, about $100 million. Those are the three geographic subregions of Riverside County that are used in Measure A, and so we stuck with that here. The lion's share of it would be here in western Riverside County. So, top of people's minds whenever, government is looking for more money from the taxpayer is, what are you going to do with it? What sort of accountability measures will exist? The traffic relief plan proposes that independent audits are conducted on how we're using the funds to ensure that we're doing it consistent with what the plan says we are supposed to do with it, and providing mandatory reviews, and that everything is conducted in an open and transparent manner. These are funds that would not be accessible to the diversion of the state legislature or Congress. These are local funds for local priorities and would be under the oversight of the Riverside County Transportation Commission. We have the statutory authority from the legislature to do this, and the body, the RCTC body on which Commissioner White, Vice Chair White serves, would be responsible. There's also a provision in state law that says any sales tax revenue that RCTC collects from a measure like this is limited. Only 1% can be used for administrative salaries and benefits. So 99% of the funds must go towards the projects. And finally, because RCTC is the authority that administers transportation sales tax in Riverside County, it means that the cities and the county and the state is, as Ann mentioned, the state is seated on our board, must work together. We're a regional body. We think regionally. The commissioners work together for what is the good of the region, but it's all coordinated, and it means that we're working together because we realize that people don't just stay in one place, and they travel across city boundaries, county boundaries, to go where they need to go and do what they need to do. I'm going to conclude with how the public and how anyone who's watching can participate with us. Again, it's trafficreliefplan.org to see the entire document. There's a QR code on the screen, so if anyone's watching, you can hold your phone up right now and you can get taken right to it. There is a comments feature on it where you can tell us exactly what you think, what you like, what you don't like. We've already received many comments. Our public outreach is just gearing up, and we are getting, and what I'm really proud to say is that the comments we're receiving they're specific, they're constructive, they're things that relate to what people's experiences are and what they'd like to see. We are translating this into Spanish so that all the members of our community can participate in their language. And we are going to be out and about. We're happy to come to your Rotary Club. We're happy to come to wherever in the community you'd like to talk about this and get your feedback. And we'll be doing that throughout the whole county. So this is really kicking off our effort. This is the first city council meeting we're coming to. We're grateful that you invited us tonight. And I would just like to turn it back over to Ann to offer some final thoughts.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. So again, Aaron has shared an awful lot of information with you, and we've done so really pretty quickly. But this is really an opportunity for us to hear from you. The items that are listed in the traffic relief plan, are we getting it right? Are we identifying the things that are important to your community? Are we hitting the right priorities with the funding categories that have been identified? So this is a terrific opportunity to share your perspectives, but again, we've got the website up and running, we're taking public comments, and I just want to echo something Aaron said about the comments that are already coming in. Within a couple of days of having this website active, we were getting some incredible comments from people, very specific about which street they were talking about, what sidewalk they meant, what school they were talking about, what freeway frustrated them on a daily basis. And that's really powerful information, and it's really important. And the commission is committed to having substantial public outreach discussions to make sure that if the commission is going to be making decisions about priorities, that we're putting the right priorities out for investment, and that we're making sure that we're addressing the needs of the communities going into the future. And also needing to recognize that what's important perhaps in the pass area may not be the same priorities that you might see coming from Southwest Riverside County and/or coming from Blythe, for example. So we recognize the county is very large. There are diverse interests, diverse needs amongst communities, and we want to make sure that the plan is flexible enough to be able to be inclusive of each of our communities. So again, thank you very much. Here is the information. We're happy to answer any questions and appreciate the invitation.
Thank you very much. Let's check, do we have any public comments?
Yes. I do have a written request from Dennis Salcido.
First of all, thank you, RCTC, for coming here and explaining what you guys do and what your objectives are for us. To the council, I would just ask that maybe you guys could look into maybe some traffic relief stuff on the south side of the 10 freeway, over by Second Street Marketplace. I obviously I know there's been some funding to get Second Street taken out to Pennsylvania, but and you've seen with the trains lately, there's been a lot of issues with getting out of there, and with the fires that come through there, your residents are stuck there. We're stuck for hours and hours at a time. One of the suggestions that I'm putting out, I want to put out there is maybe traffic to assess Highway 79, possibly coming from Michigan over towards California, and having the state put in a signal light at California, which would possibly reduce collisions from high-speed people coming down 79 and people coming off of California. That's a plausible solution to help relieve congestion. Another one is Xenia, possibly making an overpass from Xenia over to Second Street. There's a lot of empty fields. I know it would have to go at probably a 45-degree angle over the railroad tracks in the freeway. And my third one was, have a railroad build up high like they do in Colton, California, on the south side of the freeway, of the 10 freeway. They, about 10 years ago, they built the railroad to go over the top. And that way you could have an underpass under there. So those are just some suggestions I think we could possibly look into. Again, thank you for your time.
Sure, thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Next speaker is David Flores.
Okay, hello. Okay, so I'm David Flores. I'm a fourth-year student, currently sociology major over at UCR. I've been a resident for Riverside County for many years now. And yeah, when I heard about this, actually just yesterday I went over to the California Transportation Commission meeting over in Riverside at that administrative building there. I was there yesterday, it was great, met some nice people there. And I'm here today, I saw the plan put out by the County Transportation Commission. I'm really excited to hear about the plans that we have for, expanding, transportation here, making adjustments to, it's a growing community here, this side of Riverside County. It's nice to see that there's public investment going into it, creating jobs, I'd be happy to pay that sales tax, I want to see this stuff happen. So, just, a brief, experience of mine. I left the country for the first time earlier this year. I went to Japan in March, had a wonderful time, and one thing that really stuck out to me there was just completely different way of meeting people's transportation needs, moving around. It's a country around the size of California, but it's got, I think, 3 times the population, and they meet people's transportation needs extremely well, through a combination of, dense housing. I believe that was mentioned by the commission, dense housing, walkability, cyclability, alternative active transportation, in addition to obviously their world-renowned train system too. It contrasts a lot to what we have over here, but definitely what really got me was the two railway expansions for, Hemet, San Jacinto, and the Coachella Valley. I would love to see that happen. We're a large community of commuters here. Having those alternatives available to us really helps out, and just alleviating traffic, making it more affordable. I know as a student right now for UCR, I can ride the Metrolink for free, which is great. I can also ride the RTA for free, which is great. So lots of things, all of these different government programs that, we might have to pay a little bit more in taxes, but they really do help when, you can go reap those rewards from those programs. So besides that, I would like to just caution, I'm sure we know of the concepts called induced demand, how, freeway expansions don't always go the way we intend, in alleviating traffic, but I do think some of the proposals for freeway expansion are definitely necessary. They should help traffic only so long as they are also paired, as, explained in the plan, more expansion into public transportation, alternative modes of transportation, all of those things. So I'm really excited, being out here as like a voice for the young people to try and support new investment into our communities. I just started a urbanist club called the Popular Front for Urbanism over at UCR. We'll start next quarter. If you guys want to check that out, we have our Instagram, same name there, and just keep in touch, and then I'll try to post more stuff like this, what, the university is trying to do for urbanism in the area. Thank you guys.
All right, thank you, David.
And I'll check the phone lines. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, so we'll turn the time over to council for questions. Mr. White, go ahead.
Thank you. And Ann and Aaron and David, and I want to tell you that we appreciate your being here. And I have some questions sort of that I would like to get some responses to. But what I would like you to do, if you don't mind, is first of all, on this traffic relief plan, this is not for you guys, you know this by your heart, but page 14 has the highway planned improvements, and there's, I think, a fairly good representation in the I-10 corridor with, they talk about State Route 79, Highland Springs Avenue in Beaumont, Pennsylvania Avenue in Beaumont, Morongo Parkway, Main Street, County Line Road in Calamasa, and Cherry Valley Boulevard in Calamasa, which is, you live here long enough, you know all of those choke points. So if you wouldn't mind, if you could address a couple of things. One thing I heard yesterday at the ribbon cutting for the I-15 to 91 Express Lane connector was brought up, I think, by Senator Roth and Assemblymember Cervantes, was the lack of interest in funding for the Inland Empire compared to other parts of the state. So if you wouldn't mind just addressing sort of what I heard yesterday, I think would be helpful. Please, yeah.
Sure. So I think one of the struggles we've always had in the Inland Empire is that it's really hard to compete because many of the funding sources at the state and federal level are competitions. It's very hard to compete with our more urban areas on the coast, San Diego, Orange County, Los Angeles, San Francisco, the Bay Area. So historically, the Inland Empire gets overlooked, I would say, in many of the competitive funding programs. And sometimes it means we have to be a little bit louder in our conversations about what our needs are here. But also, if I look at some of the formula money, usually we get about 6%. So usually our gauge is if we get about 6% of a funding pot, it's about equivalent to where our population is. And so that's kind of what the gauge that we try and use. There are some programs where we've done better than that, but historically, the Inland Empire doesn't do as well in competitive programs because when you put our projects side by side with some of the bigger projects, they just don't compete well. And so this gets back to the prioritization discussion of where does anyone put their money? any governmental entity put their money, they put it where the needs are the greatest. And oftentimes that means we end up not being as competitive. I think that makes it even more important for Riverside County to know where it's going collectively, to have a regional focus on priorities, to be innovative. If you look at what Riverside County has done with express lanes, we have more, I'm pretty sure, we have more lane miles of express lanes than any other county in the state. We are implementing pilot technology project in Temecula. It's never been done in the state. So I think one way we start getting more attention is we start being out front on innovative, exciting ideas. We try new things. That's the way we might be able to get some more attention. But the competition is hard and it's getting increasingly difficult. This is a challenge faced not only in Riverside County, but also in San Bernardino County and Central Coast.
And what share of our funding right now is Measure A versus other funding?
It's kind of hard to say because it varies so much depending on the programs, but let me give you a comparison. So 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the average project had 70 to 80% state or federal funding on the project and maybe 25% local money, if that. That's pretty much flipped on its head. We are now at a point where most projects have a majority of local funding, anywhere from 50 to 80%, and the rest is state or federal. I'll use an example. The 91 project in Corona, the $1.4 billion project, I think had $40 million worth of state money on it. The rest was all financing Measure A, and we did have a federal TIFIA loan, so we did have a federal loan, but.
And, you know, I'm not surprised with your numbers with the interest in the pass area because that's the number one issue we hear the most about as council members is, you know, when are you going to fix the traffic? What can you do? You have too many houses. We hear all of that. It's a shame we're not doing this workshop a week from today because there's some other funding that's coming towards, hopefully, if it's approved by the commission, that will speak to one of the items that the first gentleman brought up, which is the grade steps. And if you can talk about that, if you don't mind.
Sure. So the grade separation program at RCTC has been, in my opinion, really successful. Lack of grade separations have been a huge safety problem, a significant delay problem. We've made a lot of progress, but the pass area is now at a point where I think it's risen to the top in terms of the level of concern about the impact. I know you've been impacted greatly by a series of incidents on the freight railroad that have completely gridlocked the city. The examples the gentleman was giving, I've been on the other side of the train trying to be able to get home when that's happened. So I think under any situation, the grade separations in this pass need to be prioritized. Next week at our commission meeting, we have some state funding, transit and intercity rail funding that is coming from the state. Not only will Beaumont Transit we are recommending that Beaumont Transit receive a share of the funding. We're also recommending $5 million contribution towards Pennsylvania grade separation and another $5 million towards Hargrave, just to help the city keep progress going on the project, and $10 million to get started on the Broadway grade separation in the Cabazon area. So the grade separations, I think that is one area where if we can get the projects started in terms of get the environmental work done, maybe get the design work done here at the local level, those projects will compete very well at the state and federal level. And what we're kind of hoping for is if all of those projects get to the same place in terms of getting their designs done, we could bundle them together to go after some really significant money for those grade separations.
And I'll finish my portion here. To take the opportunity to let our community know some of I mean, this is not all just in the future. We have a lot of things happening right now, You mentioned Potrero. I think recently we received significant funding from the state and from RCTC as well. That's going to help us be able to put in the on-ramps that we need at Potrero, which will provide some relief from a train stoppage because it gives a way for everyone on that side of town to get over to our side of town. We also, you guys, RCTC is taking the role and the lead on the Highland Interchange, which is probably the #1 topic in this area. And, you know, we're pretty, I think, pretty well know, we know where we are on that, but if you could speak to sort of where that project is and if it would help that Robert speaks to the Beaumont side, but I think RCTC is taking the lead on that between Beaumont and Banning.
We are. So RCTC has taken the lead on the project. It's a complicated project, and so several years ago in conversation with both City of Beaumont and City of Banning staff, and then subsequently the conversations with the councils about us taking the lead because it is a complicated and difficult project. So the project, environmental, working on design, we have, and off the top of my head, I'm not going to be precisely right, every 2 years, we are, RCTC prioritizes our share of state transportation improvement program dollars, and we've put Highland Springs into that program for construction dollars of the project as well. So for Highland Springs, I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but Highland Springs, we are going to keep making progress on that project. It's a high priority for the commission, and I think we'll continue to keep that progress moving.
Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have right now.
Thank you. Any others? Ms. White?
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you coming here and speaking to us. It's always nice to be the guinea pigs. I have to say, you guys looked very polished and well done today. So I thought the presentation was excellent. So thank you. And gives us some excellent speaking points. One thing that I think some of the feedback that I have just to touch on, and I know that Councilmember White just pointed it out as well, along the I-10 corridor, I do think that we have one choke point, which would be the Oak Valley off-ramp that I would like to highlight on there as well. That is something that I often hear about from my constituents, especially those going to where our newer communities are. So I think that one needs to be prioritized a little bit on here as well. I have a nursing background and I'm married to a firefighter, and often coming over that hill, I'm always thinking, oh my gosh, we may have fatalities there or things along those lines, especially as the traffic backs up there. So that would just be something that I would like to highlight as one that we would potentially add to your list as well to come through there. The other thing I just really wanted to highlight is you guys have touched on the realignment of 79. Which, as we know, Beaumont's a commuter town. I think we heard in our last, I myself commute over 30 miles, but luckily I go to the Coachella Valley. So hearing, express lanes there is exciting for me too, as that moves forward. However, realigning the 79, you guys highlight Beaumont Avenue and kind of our Beaumont interchange there. I really just want to focus on that as something that's important for me as well and for my constituents, because it can get backed up. You know yourself commuting, I'm sure, that it can really kind of become a choke point there. So as that realignment moves forward and continues to be of discussion, I would like to continue to really include that I-10 interchange in those discussions as well, because that is kind of an off point or an entryway into that realignment. And so I want to make sure that that stays high on the list as well, at least from my standpoint. And then I think the only other thing that I really wanted to highlight is that I think you guys have created definitely an inclusive plan, and one that I think is easy to speak to. Sometimes I think when you add more than 7 points, it's going to be difficult to discuss for myself as a council member as well as for the public. But I think 7 points are easy to talk to and easy to discuss on the breakdown. So I wanted to provide that feedback as well, that I definitely appreciate that. With your public opinion survey, do you guys know how many responses you got back? Was it a substantial number?
It was over 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it was over 1,000.
And from all areas? I know you guys highlighted kind of the Beaumont area to say 66% on there, but.
Yeah, we made sure that the poll was a representative sample of the relative population of each part of Riverside County.
Great. I think that is probably about it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Voigt. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you again both for coming out. Really appreciate the explanation on this. Just a few things. One of the proposals I saw is that the I-10 Beaumont Avenue overpass is a concern. One of the things that I look at, and maybe you could share some more information, is it seems like it's very restrictive. Obviously, it's a choke point. So doing the 79 realignment, you're going to get more traffic flow. Is there a possibility that we could look at pulling traffic from 79 a different way and get it over to the 60, because we're putting that Potrero interchange in, rather than sending everybody over the 10 to pick up the 60 that way, so that we're decreasing the volume and maybe taking some of that volume off before it gets to that location? Is that, it used to be a road on the WR cog, and they removed it.
Yes, there used to be a Potrero bypass.
Right.
That would run from 79, and I can't remember if it came in around California or, I can't remember where it came in.
It was kind of like along the foothills,
Right.
but
Right, so there was a Potrero bypass at one time, and it would have done exactly what you're talking about. I can't recall why it came out of the plan, but that can be something we will follow up on that to see what the status is, because I think the progress the city has made with the Potrero interchange
right.
might give a reason to start looking at that again. The issue of the 1079 interchange is, in my opinion, becoming one of the most significant priorities. And so diverting any traffic away from there that can be diverted and making improvements
Yeah, right.
will help to offset that. But
Because
we will follow up on that. I just don't remember why it was removed from the plan.
Yeah, nor do I, and I appreciate that. Yeah, because it's just really hard to increase the capacity for that area, right? So pulling it off, I think, would be good. One of the things is I looked through, and you raised it at the end, and I appreciate that, is the pulling money for funding MSHCP or CVMSHCP. Back early on, when these programs, at least the MSHCP was created, my understanding was it was supposed to be a self-funded program, that developers would pay money, they'd have to, and that would help support that program. When you look at 12.5% of $5 billion, that's a huge chunk of change that, for me personally, would like, as a council member, would really like to see go towards world projects, right? Is there any way of looking at, and I know that program may need some funding, but looking at maybe reducing that percentage so that we can get more money towards infrastructure rather than, and maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but that's just kind of the way I can explain it to my constituency, right? It's just a thought.
Yep, this is the feedback we're seeking.
Okay.
The Western Riverside County MSHCP has acquired roughly, I don't have the precise figure in front of me, but approximately half of the habitat that's needed to acquire, and we're 20 years in. And with property values going up the way they are, the amount of revenue we're collecting today will continue to fall behind the amount that land is going to cost to finish the plan. And so one of the thoughts behind including this amount of revenue to support the MSHCP habitat acquisitions is to make sure that we just get the land acquired as quickly as possible, have a source to do so, so that we're not paying higher dollar many years out.
Right.
So that's the thought behind it. I certainly hear what you're saying, and that's feedback we'll take into consideration.
I appreciate that.
Can I just add something else onto that too? So Aaron mentioned mitigation for vehicle miles traveled. We will have to provide mitigation for any project that increases the number of miles vehicles drive. One of the potential mitigations for projects might be putting more land into conservation.
Okay.
So while there is the development commitment
Right.
to invest, if we want to build a highway project and we need to mitigate it, and land conservation is potentially one of the mitigations, using that money for the mitigation component
Makes
serves a
sense.
dual purpose. It
Right.
mitigates for the VMT, and it helps us reach our goals faster while land prices are lower.
And I would include that in your presentation as well, because that makes total sense, and I appreciate that.
Okay. And if I may add one more policy thought here on this. The MSHCP, I want to validate what you said. It is primarily funded by the development community through the development impact fee, we call it the local development mitigation fee, that the city imposes on development pursuant to our Nexus study. That's the mechanism, so that the plan will have to be funded one way or the other. And so this really becomes kind of a policy choice where we want to drive housing, production, there are fees on housing, and are the fees gonna pay for it? Could this pay for it? We just need to figure out how the region wants to pay for it. That's the policy tension here.
I think
so
if you'll ask the constituents, they'll say, well, let the developer pay for it, but I understand that that's not a realistic expectation in some cases, so I appreciate that. Grade separation, I'm glad that you mentioned that. That is a key, especially at the Pennsylvania. I think California is another one that we're looking at. Rail, I think it's important for our residents to know that you guys are focused on rail as well, which is another key transportation aspect. Ideally, and I'm not sure if you can help, I mean, we're trying to design the overpass or the grade separation. Anything you can do to help us with UP would be great. Because we can put all the money we can at, we throw all the money we can at it, but if we don't get cooperation on the other end from Union Pacific, it's very difficult to get those projects through.
We are well aware of those challenges, and we will help as much as we can. One of the other things we're wanting to do too, by looking at how could we bundle these grade separations, is maybe by doing them together, that we're having those conversations all at once
Right.
instead of project by project. And we have been meeting with Union Pacific lately on the Coachella Valley Rail project, and we've talked to them about the grade separations up here. And I do believe that they would like the grade separation issue up here resolved as well. I don't think it's something that they like to see happen, where they're causing a lot of safety and traffic turmoil up in your communities. So we would be happy to work with the city to facilitate as much as we can with Union Pacific.
The other benefit with this program that I think our residents need to understand is that you talked about the Measure A. But we're paving roads that within the city of Beaumont with Measure A money that hadn't been paved in 50 years. So this is, it's a reality that folks can actually see on the ground in their neighborhoods, which is great. We're maintaining roads so that they last longer, right? We get more mileage out of them. So that's another reason why I'm glad you're here to explain that and talk about it. The last comment I have that I have a concern over is the bypass, the I-10 bypass that you mentioned. Has that design been finalized? Because the last design I saw didn't really like where it was emptying into, because it was really bringing traffic into areas that are already stifled. So you have any additional information on that?
The project is currently in design. I do know that the environmental component of that project was very challenging because there are a lot of conflicting opinions about that alignment. I do know that the county is looking at that project in conjunction with knowing other improvements need to be done, specifically at Hargrave, I think was part of the deal. Aaron and I are actually meeting with Patty Romo next week
Okay.
on the I-10 bypass. And so we may know more in the next couple of weeks. But RCTC is allocating some additional funds to the county for the I-10 bypass. Several years ago, RCTC, because it is so important for the whole region, RCTC identified the bypass as an important project for funding. So as the county needs additional funding for the project, RCTC has been contributing. But it's a $100 million project. It is not an inexpensive one, but we are committed to helping to get it done. But we'll talk to Patty next week.
Yeah, tell Patty I said hi. It's gonna be nice to see her back. Thank you for that. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Martinez?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Well, so when you're the last one to go, a lot of my comments are ditto. So if I'm repetitive, and I apologize, but thank you, RCTC, for coming. I know you have a very busy schedule, a lot of jurisdictions to cover and answer to, so thank you for coming out in force. We really do appreciate that. On the plan, I appreciate the focus on the public input. You're hearing what we're hearing, so that's good for the public to know that their comments are going to two different sets of ears. I'm thankful that you have a focus on safety, keeping the traffic flowing and improve safety by keeping things moving. I also read where keeping things moving and staying out of traffic jams increases economic values to jurisdictions. The sitting in traffic loses dollars. So keeping that moving also is improving in that part as well. It makes sense that you do keep a main focus on highways and interchanges. I mean, granted, the cars are here now, so we have to do with what we can with what we have now. But I like how the plan also looks at a couple of different directions. It looks at the inclusion of the ancillary projects such as traffic signalization and so forth. So things that we can do to kind of help move. I appreciate that focus on that. I think it's smart planning. And then, of course, looking out of the box, like we had mentioned for the rail, keeping things off the road. I know those are big projects as well, but if the cars are there, you can only mitigate what you can. Trying to get them off makes sense as well. So it's kind of all a three-point project. So I appreciate the plan looking at that as well. And the comment about equity, so much we've said that the pass area has been overlooked by the state and so forth and feds. So, looking at the way you said that the percentages have been changed, we kind of have to look out for ourselves, and it's unfortunate, but that is what it is. So coming up with a plan like this that helps, take the job ourselves that makes sense as well. So I'm very supportive of that. You asked if you had hit it on the mark, and you absolutely did, in my opinion. I believe that, of course, one of my big things is the grade separations. I mean, it's a humongous safety issue, and it's not just a convenience thing, it is a safety issue. So trying to mitigate that makes sense, so I'm thankful for that. And I'm glad to see this other book that came in. It really does help me as well, so I appreciate whoever handed me that, but that makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad to see for the public, and you'll be as surprised too, that we have everything outlined that we talk about, so Pennsylvania and so forth, so thank you for that. It makes sense that dollars stay in this region where it's collected, or at least focused in the area, and things like this will help. And I'm glad to hear that there could be another approach of bundling this idea. Hey, whatever works, usually when you work as a team to regionalize something or as a package, sometimes that's, makes more sense for Sunrise, or at least for grants and so forth. So we appreciate that. I appreciate the comment on the 10 and the 79. We see that growing in issues, and one issue is bringing another issue, especially when you have the alignment going a little bit more south, and that big project where we're coming up and it's moving in this direction. So I appreciate that. I think that's smart planning, looking what the effects are going to cause. So you have to look at that now, because there's a lot of study that needs to be done on that before we even get to the planning stage. So I appreciate that being included. And the bypass, the I-10 bypass. So, and I remember this way back when we first started talking about it, and I saw one of the original maps, and I don't even know where we are now, so I appreciate that. I'd like to see what it looks like. So in concept, it sounds great and it's necessary, but when I had seen some of the drawings and maps, it's like, well, that's not really what I consider a bypass. Are you really doing what we need to do there? So I just caution that we make sure that it's truly doing what it's supposed to do, and not just entitle but actually doing a bypass and creating that, because you're right, a lot of it dumps out in Banning, and if you don't have those infrastructures in place, then, you know, what is it gonna do? You know, end up popping back on anyway, you know, and I know Banning with, their Sun Lakes Boulevard, you know, there's some issues going on with that, but everything is tied into everything, you know, with us, if we can move that and get through Highland Springs and go further down into, I believe it's Sunset, you know, a lot of that stuff helps in the bigger picture. So I appreciate that, but I just want to caution that and I won't know until I see it myself, that it's really, really doing what it needs to do, not just in concept or title, but actually in reality. And my question on VMT was answered, so thank you. I did have that circled here, so I wanted a little more explanation on that. So that was answered. Thank you, Ann. But that's all I have. I'm losing my voice a bit, so I won't talk too much, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll jump in and ask a couple of questions myself. In reference to funds being spent and so forth and the categories on those, I'm going to kind of carry on from what Mayor Pro Tem Laura had mentioned with the rail. So there's 2 rails in there right now. They're both owned by Union Pacific. We had designed a grade crossing to account for a 3rd rail, and now there's talk about a 4th rail. And that could get carried away and pushed on and pushed on and pushed out and so forth. And so my question would be, is there some latitude in reference to how money is spent with this? For example, if we feel that, and I'm not for taking money from public transportation, but if we see that some of those projects, especially with the rail, turning into being a further out project, could more funds be diverted temporarily towards the highway solutions and so forth? Is there some latitude? Does that go to the commission for vote? Does it ebb and flow? Is there some leeway with that?
Mayor, it's a great question. There are some flexibilities built into how we can do this. I mean, if this goes to the voters, this traffic relief plan, I mean, it will be a voter-approved expenditure plan and ordinance, but our statutes and the plan itself do provide an amendment process. The commission can amend the plan, but it has to go to the cities and the county for ratification. There's a public process to do that if we want to, and we can do that with Measure A today. As well, there are some flexibilities built into how we wrote this. For instance, there are projects such as the Mid-County Parkway or even the Coachella Valley Rail project where multiple funding categories could be used to fund that project. So a grade separation may be funded by the Safe Streets and Roads category. It's eligible there, but it might also be part of the Coachella Valley Rail project as well.
Gotcha, okay. Very
So
good.
we want to be able to use different funding buckets depending on what the circumstances.
Okay, and,
Can I also
Yeah,
add,
sure.
add in there too? There are other fund types, and let me give you an example. We're actually going to put what you're asking about into it's in our recommendation next week for the transit dollars that we talked about. We are consciously investing some of the money that maybe historically would have gone all to 100% to the bus transit. We're specifically putting it on some grade separations and rail. So those are the kinds of decisions that the commission frequently has to make with different fund types of what flexibility do we need to, or what investments do we need to make in a flexible way because of what the needs are right now. And we're really trying to embed that into this program. So I think it's something we probably need to take another look at and make sure that we've got enough flexibility in here for grade separations to make sure that they could be funded out of multiple fund types.
that's great, I can appreciate that. And then just kind of as a last, well, I guess Mr. White's got one, but we'll go to him and then I have one last question before we go home. So go ahead, Mr. White.
David always likes to get the final word in, so I usually end up going first normally anyways. So I just wanted to finish with, there's been a lot of talk about the Pennsylvania grade SEP, and we have already been doing our share to earmark and set money aside for that. I know it's a high priority of this council, and every time we have surpluses, which, to be honest, we're doing pretty well lately. We try to put a little bit more towards Pennsylvania. One of our last meetings, we put, what are the numbers at Pennsylvania, do you know right now? That
For
we've
the
set,
total construction project?
that we've set aside for that?
Oh, it was about 4 to 5 million.
Okay. And we also in one of our latest meetings, made a commitment financially to the Beaumont Avenue interchange. And I think I spoke to you about the fact that we thought we'd set money aside to start doing analysis and studies. And when I spoke to you about that, you told me RCTC was already moving in that direction. So I know that the city of Beaumont would want to partner with RCTC in the best way possible so that we're not trying to do something that you're already doing, and maybe we can bring our local resources. I mean, we're not asking for all the funding to come from outside. We're trying to do our best to set money aside and make those our priorities, not just that we're talking about them up here, but we're actually putting money aside for those. And that's all I wanted to finish with.
All right, thank you. So my last word is to give you your last word. And that is, you made the comment in terms of a united front, and you used the example of putting grade separation designs in at the same time. Is there anything else that we can do as a city and with our neighbors to help move this effort forward?
Yes, so a couple of things. I think it can be really important because of the number of projects in the past between all three of the cities and the county, but especially the three cities with the interchanges. To the extent possible, if you can all agree on the priorities of those interchanges, that is very, very helpful. The cities did that, and along with the county, I think about 10 years ago, identified, here are our top 5 projects. And that letter was given to RCTC. So as money became available, we went right down the list, and all of those projects now have been funded. So to the extent that you can work with your neighboring jurisdictions to identify which interchanges are farthest ahead, in which phase, so that we can start focusing money on getting them done one at a time. I know that might not be easy, and projects may be ready to go at the same time, but to the extent that you can prioritize. The other thing I would say, which Elizabeth and her team have been doing a tremendous job in being engaged with RCTC staff, having regular conversations. I kind of lost track of how many times Elizabeth and I have spoken in the past 4 or 5 months or so, talking about projects, where we are with money. The more your team stays in touch with us, so we know, where are your projects in terms of delivery? What are the issues? How much money do you need? The more we know, the more we can assist. And the more, when we become available, of a fund type that might become available, and we know your project is ready, that can help us help you get your project funded. Your team has done a terrific job, so I would just say encourage that additional communication, and I think we can do a lot of really good things.
Awesome, appreciate that. So with that, can we get a motion to receive and file? Do we have any other public comment that may have come in?
I haven't got any additional. I could check with the phone line.
Okay,
Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
okay. Oh, sure. Do we have anybody else that's in the audience that has any other additional public comments would like to share? Okay. All right, I think we're good.
Want me to make a motion?
Sure.
I can make a motion to go ahead and receive and file this report, and once again, thank you guys for being here.
I'll second.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Boyd?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Finn?
Yes. And then with that, we will adjourn tonight's special workshop at 6:20 PM. Thank you, everybody.
Mayor, can we get a photo with you guys?
Oh, sure.
That's great.